In this video, we're taking this super basic webinar workflow that was sent to us and it was by another creator, and we're turning it into a proper AI agent system. If you want to build really solid products that get really great results that you stick with, you need to build proper systems. So this is a fully fledged AI automation system for creating webinars, for creating all of your marketing assets for webinars built inside of Airtable and using n8n in order to automate all of the AI components of this workflow. We'll show you how to set this up from scratch. We'll show you how to take a very simple spreadsheet or a very simple table and turn it into a proper system. I'll also show you how to structure this in a way that is scalable so that you can use it for as many brands as you want, so that you can use it with as many team members as you want in a very simple way.
Now, of course, we will be giving away these templates for this workflow here today for free. So you simply just follow the link in the description in the first comment and come into our community into the free section here, which will be the resources tab. From there, you can actually look through all of the resources, but you can just then need to find the webinar automation system, and all of the templates that we're about to build will be in here available for you to download and get started using yourself today in your own account. Now, the other thing that is important to note is that this is episode number 5 of a 9-part series where I'm diving deep into how to build n8n and Airtable AI systems. Systems are the most important thing that we talk about and what we build for clients. Clients don't care about AI automations, but they do care about and they do use AI automation systems. And that's what this entire series is about. So if you haven't watched from episode number 1 yet, then I'd highly recommend you go back and check that out and then watch all the way through to episode 9. And by the time you get to the end, you'll go from basically being a beginner in terms of AI automations into an expert who knows how to build and structure AI systems that clients actually adopt. So make sure you stay tuned and work through every single episode. We have a lot of key building principles, but the most important one to remember is that you don't want to be building AI automations. You want to build AI systems. So AI systems are end-to-end outcomes. They allow one source of truth. They allow fallbacks. You can build out interfaces for humans. You can create roles and permissions, have an audit trail. You can create KPIs and dashboards and analytics inside of that system. Whereas AI automations, they're just single task macros. They're point-to-point hacks. They're hard-coded steps. They're hidden workflows. When it comes to working with clients, they just want the end result. They don't want an n8n workflow. They don't even want to understand an n8n, and they don't want to add their team members in there. Everybody's too scared to make any changes inside of n8n because they're scared they might break something. So we need to build systems that are scalable, that allow us to easily train our clients, our own team members, your client team members on the system itself. And I've proven this over the years. I've built a community with more than 769 members who have purchased AI automation systems from us, and they're using them every day. Plus, I run makebigmoves.ai, which is an agency that helps businesses doing anywhere between $30,000 a month right up to we've worked with businesses doing $1 million a month for all types of different AI systems. And you can see here all of these ones that we've built. They're not just automations built inside of n8n or make.com, but they have full interfaces and systems built on top of the actual workflow.
So if you are interested in how to take a very simple automation that you might find from other creators, maybe you created it yourself, maybe you found it in a n8n template library. All of these are very basic types of automations. You don't want to focus on automations. You want to focus on building systems. Systems are the things that make you the most money, that make you the most productive. They're the things that you want inside of your business. They're the things that your clients want inside of their businesses as well. They don't want automations that are buggy that they have to go into n8n for. So we're building a full interface, a full app, where the only place that your clients or yourself need to actually work from is inside that app itself, inside of the Airtable component. There's no need to ever go into n8n, not even to update your AI models. So you might be asking, how do we make that possible? I'm going to go through the entire process, literally from me sitting down at the start to how we actually get to the endpoint. It used to take us many hours, like I'm talking dozens and dozens of hours to build this system. I'm going to build this system in the next 2 to 3 hours with you looking over my shoulder the entire time. Are you ready? Because let's dive in. So let's dive into this webinar system now. And obviously when you get these types of scenarios and these types of templates from other creators online, or maybe it's something you come up with yourself, there's not a whole lot of structure to this. Like everything's there across in a single row. It's triggered by a form that looks like this. There's no interfaces included. And it's just really confusing on how you should actually use it. And anything that is confusing, just nobody really follows through with it. So we're actually going to build out a proper webinar automation system. And it's going to contain all of these tables here. So 4 different tables, one for brand assets, one for the webinar name and offer, one for our AI output. So it'll be for the webinar and marketing materials. And then of course, one for our AI models. Now I'm going to explain why we build it out this way as we go. And you can check all the other videos that I've done on building these types of templates to really get an understanding as to why we need to build it this way. If you want to make sure that it's a great system that is scalable, that makes it easy to bring in new AI models as they come out. If you want your team to comply and easy to train your team, there's so many beneficial reasons for building out proper systems like this, rather than just putting something quick and easy together. Now, I get it. There's a lot of creators with school communities and they need to pump out tons and tons of content all the time. And they just do like half-assed jobs here and there just to push something out, which looks good to beginners. But if once you start playing around with it, you know that it's not that good. So we're actually going to create a really solid product here today. Now, once we've built the table out first, so we always start with our Airtable tables and we get that maybe 80 to 90% of the way built, because from then the automations become really easy. So workflow 1 of the n8n automation that we build today will be a workflow that researches and creates our target audience persona. It will brainstorm and generate smart goals for the webinar, and it will create 7 webinar topic ideas. It'll output that back into our original table. And then workflow 2 will create an outline for the chosen webinar topic. So you'll then choose from one of these 7, and then it'll create an output into this output field. And then workflow 3 will write the PowerPoint or Keynote script for the webinar automatically, bring in your outline into the slides. It writes a 5 email sales email sequence, writes a series of webinar invite emails, and it generates ad copy to promote the webinar. So that's what we're building today, but it doesn't have to stop there. Like if you want to continue building this out, then you could also create automations to generate AI images and icons for each slide that could be automated. You could generate registration page copy. You could even automate the setup of the registration page. You could automate sending the emails to your CRM. You could automate the script of the webinar, or automate the script being read by your AI twin via HeyGen or something similar like that. And if you do want customizations on top of what I'm building today, then just head to our agency, makebigmoves.ai, and we can definitely help you with that. So that's the plan for today. Now, I'm going to just dive straight in and build all of this out. And keep in mind, you can come back and watch this as many times as you like. I'm going to show you the little shortcuts that I take as I'm building. I'm going to show you the different resources that we use when building inside of n8n, so that even if you are a beginner into automation, you can use these tools to step you through. Now, the first place to start is going to be Airtable. So now we've already built these brand assets before, so we don't need to start from scratch all the time. So I've got another one here, and I've got our brand context as a formula. So this formula combines all these other fields to the right. We've got a brand voice guidelines field. We've got a checkbox, which we won't need for this one, so I'm just going to hide that. And we've got our excluded words and writing grade level. So these are all the things that we send into the AI. And this formula just combines everything into one, so that we send only one field into the AI automation rather than 2. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight all of those. I'm going to copy them, and let's just see what happens if we paste them here. Yeah, it didn't really work. Let's add a single line here, and let's try again. All right. So it's added that in here. The only thing it didn't get right was the formula field. So I'm just going to copy this, and we're going to come back in, and we're going to change this to a formula. And we'll hit save. And it's not going to add it in because we don't actually have, it's not going to import the writing grade level. So we just need to add that one ourselves. So we're going to go single select field, so just go writing grade level. And you can put in as many grades as you want. Like generally we'll use 6th or 7th grade, depending on the brand, sometimes 5th, but generally 6th is the one that we'll go with. So what I mean by this is that anytime you're prompting the AI, if you tell it what grade level to write at, then you actually get way better responses, especially if you keep to around like 5th or 6th grade. 5th grade, if you've got a mass market product, like a health supplement or something like that, a health product. 6th grade is typically better for like education companies and those types of brands. So let's just delete these other ones out of the way. Now, so we've got our brand voice, we've got our excluded words, and we've got our writing grade level. So now we should be able to copy this formula. And this formula simply combines some text with those fields that we just added. So the blue are the fields that it's pulling in from. And then the other parts here are just some text. And then the new line there represented by the JSON -n that is the way that we combine it all. So we're just going to open up this label here, create a formula, add this in, and then hit save. And now that has been created. So we can see it's combined all of those fields across here. So the first one is just going to be our Big Moves brand, and the others we don't really need. So I'm just going to remove them for now. So we always start like that. We've got our brand assets created now. The next one is going to be our webinar name and offer. So I'm just going to call this webinar. And the purpose of building these different tables is that we also need to link them together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go link to another record, and I'm going to say link to brand assets. And we're going to go create field, and then we'll add a lookup field, which will be we should change the label to our brand assets for automation. So let's just rename this brand assets for automation. So this field we're going to send into every AI automation that we do. So we come back in, let's just re-add this one in with the right name. So we'll go add lookup field, we go add in this one here. And now when I select the Big Moves brand, it automatically pulls in the brand assets for that particular brand. So this is how we begin to build relational databases where you only add information one time in one location for that particular brand. So this allows us to structure a database correctly and can pull in all the information without having to rewrite things over and over again. So the webinar is, obviously we're going to create a name here for this webinar, but we're going to add in all of the different fields now that we need for asking it to research and create a target audience persona, brainstorm and generate some smart goals for the webinar, and create 7 webinar topics. Now, some of these fields should already be in the webinar planning section. So our niche, target audience, webinar learning outcomes. So basically our niche, I would actually put into the brand assets. So let's copy this one across here. We're just going to add in a new one here called niche. And this is in the brand assets. So our niche would be AI tools and templates. Or we'll go a bit more broad, AI education. And then we can bring this one in here as well. So we'll just go add a lookup field and we'll bring in our niche across here. Next, our target audience. So, I mean, generally we want the AI to really go deep on our target audience, but we can add in that for this. Now there's two ways we could do this. We could do it based on the brand, or we could do it based on the webinar, because if you think about how your audience is going to be positioned, it's going to be like this, right? So let's have a look at the ClickUp again. So we've got our webinar name and offer. We would put a high level audience in our brand assets, but the webinar will also do some research and find and refine that audience or that avatar for the webinar. Because you could have different webinars within your business that speak to slightly different avatars within your audience, but you should have an overarching audience avatar. So let's add this one in here as well. So we'll just say audience avatar, and this will be a long text. And I'm just going to write, we help small business owners and creators. Cool. So we've added our audience avatar into here, and we can just add that as a lookup field as well. So these are all the things that should get added immediately in this field rather than filling it in yourself. So the niche will be added, the target audience will be added, which is at a high level. The webinar learning outcomes, that's definitely one that we want to add in. So we're going to add in this one here. So we'll go webinar learning outcomes. So this will be created manually. We'll create an interface for this later. Presentation format. So this will determine whether we generate the webinar slides automatically as PowerPoint or Apple Keynote. So we can add this one in as well. So let's open up this form. Okay, so we'll go a single select and we'll just go slide type, and we'll go Apple Keynote, or what was the other one? PowerPoint. Next, webinar date and time. So that's always a good one to add in. So we'll just go webinar date. So you can choose what time zone you want to add that in. I like having 24-hour time, and then you can display the time zone if you like. So let's just display this local time. Webinar length in minutes. Not sure why we need that, but let's just add it anyway. Webinar benefits. So I'm just going to go through and complete all of these, and we can talk through it at the end. Okay, so we've gone through and we've added all of these. Now, the one thing that I've added the business branding guidelines to the actual brand assets table. And there's some confusion around what we're going to do here. So the urgency and scarcity, I guess we need to give it a little bit of information around scarcity that we could use, but I'll be asking AI to come up with some of these things. Also, the benefits, we could do a couple of basic benefits and objections, but we would essentially ask the AI to identify those when we're actually building that out. So overall, we've got that ready. So instead of using a form, then the better way to build this is actually through an interface. So Airtable actually make it so easy to build an interface of this type. And let's just see if we can use AI to build out an interface. So we're going to see if we can use AI to build this. So we'll typically use a list view. I tried a grid view before, it was actually the wrong one. I got a little bit confused. But we're just saying build a list view for the webinar and brand assets table, and built so they can open the record and complete the blank fields for each record. Sort, so the latest record is at the top. So let's just hit build. And I think it should get this right. So the AI now is going to go off and start to put that together for us. And it's probably going to get it some of the way, and we'll have to just do the refinements at the end. So this is going to be interesting. I don't use this very often. All right. So let's just close this up, and the webinar overview we can delete. We don't want that one. Brand assets. So we have our brand, so we should be able to open this up, and then basically we want to make these editable. So what's going on here? So we should be able to make some edits. So let's just go put this at the top. We're going to add a background color, and we want to make, so this is the formula field, which we send into the automation. So we don't need that inside of the interface itself. But when you're adding in a new brand, then you can come in and you can complete these fields so that you have it ready for this brand. So I'm just going to move that across to make it a little bit nicer. So we might add these ones at the top. And then let's go back to AI and say in each table, add a record creation form. So we can add a new record, plus add a delete. So it actually did pretty well. And then I'm just going to say in each table, add a record creation form. So we can add new records, plus add a delete button on each record so we can easily delete it. Okay, so it can't create forms yet. So we'll have to do that one ourselves. So what I mean by that is we now have our interface here, and it has our brand. We can filter out the things that we don't want in this overview here. Basically, we just need to have the name. I'm not sure why that writing grade level is at the start. It should be hidden, so that's quite strange. Let's just see if we can hide that again. Very weird. So I'm actually going to go edit records in line, no, and click into the record detail, yes. But why is that there? I've never come across this before. Here we go. So we just want to delete that out. There we go. So that's good. And we can click into there. We could also remove these other things. So we're just going to remove these. We can keep the niche, audience avatar, brand guidelines. So what I would probably do is move the niche up. So now you can begin to see how just structuring these databases or these interfaces is actually quite easy to do. So we have our big moves, we have our niche, and then that will link to the webinar. So when we open that up, it opens up a little dashboard here, and then we can change our brand voice guidelines, we can change our excluded words, we can change our audience avatar, and we can change our brand guidelines from here. So if you compare this to where we started when we first built it, when we first saw this template, or what most other automations are doing, is if you need to change any of those things, the writing guidelines, the brand voice, so and so forth, typically people are building that inside of the n8n automations, which is the totally wrong place to put it. You want to be building them into interfaces so that now, like imagine you could have as many brands as you want. You could be an agency managing 100 brands and you don't have to have 100 automations. You simply have one dashboard like this, and then you can add different brand voices inside of this dashboard, which we then send into automation. So that's where we're going with this. Stay tuned. We're going to get there at some point. Next, let's move on to this webinar list view. So here we need to do quite a lot of cleaning up. Let's just open this up and see where we're at. Yeah, okay. So there's quite a lot of cleaning up to do with this one. Let me just do this one in the background for you. So we have this record set up now. Now we probably need to name this. So we're just going to say webinar 1. Come back and we'll redo this as we're actually putting in real information. But you would complete the date, length, host name, slide type, learning outcomes, webinar benefits, bonuses, offer name, offer details, product type, offer price, desired outcome, offer testimonial, offer benefits, offer objections. So all of that will get completed as we are going. And let's just remove these two. And I don't like the inline editing. Like it gets a little bit hard. So let's just remove the prefix field. Webinar, so we're going to have our webinar name. I think that's a good one. We want to have probably our offer name here as well. So webinar name, webinar date is probably a good one to keep. Length, host, we can keep, and offer name. I think other than that, we don't really need anything else. So those are pretty good. Let's just space them out a little bit. Then when you click in, all of these will be filled out based on a form. And what I mean by that, so we're just going to add that form now. So we'll have, if we click into this top section here, we can then come down to buttons and we'll go add a button. Then we click on the button and then we'll go add new webinar. Let's just go new webinar. And this one will create open record creation form. And then we'll go edit form. So here is, it's currently linking to the, so we need to change this to the web. So we open that up, our source is actually webinar, and then we're going to go edit form. So here, we need to select the right brand every single time. So we're going to make that a required field, and then this is going to be the webinar name. And I like to have the smaller fields up the top first. So let's get those smaller fields out of the way. That makes it nice and easy to get this done. I don't know why that in minutes was in this section. It should be in the helper text. And then we're adding all of those fields that we've created for this particular webinar. All right, so we've got the basics there now. We've got our add new webinar, and we've structured into two sections. So the top section is essentially about the webinar. So maybe let's call this about webinar. And then our second section here is about the offer and product. So we'll say about offer and product. So the person, so yourself as a user, needs to have all of these completed. Now, keep in mind that we also have an offer system where you can create those offers. So all of this is in here. And then once you've created your offer, then that's when you would add all of these offer details into here. So this builds on top of the offer one. If you haven't set up the offer one yet, then you definitely need that before you go any further. So let's just give these a bit of extra information in here so we know where we're going. We're going to call this 60 minutes, and we'll say this is with me. All right. So now we have some good information there. We've got our brand assets and we've got our webinar list view. Now I'm just going to finish off a couple of extra things. So let's just do a quick rename of this, and we'll just call this brand. And like, we want a new record form here as well, but we also want to add in an easy way to delete these records. So I'm going to add in a button, click the button, and we're just going to say delete record. That one's good. We're also going to add in the create record. Cool, so we've got our add new brand guidelines form here. Once they create that, they can open up this record, they can make any edits, and then you can delete that record from here as well. Then we've got our webinar, so you can add a new webinar from up here. Once it's created, we can then edit all of the parts of the webinar in here as well. So I'm just going to hit publish, and we're making some good progress now. So next we need to add in the two other tables. So we want an AI output field, and we want an AI models field. Let's just start with the easy one first, which is the AI models. We already have this created in other workflows. So I'm just going to open up our AI models from here, and let me just pull in these. We're going to just make a few adjustments to the AI models. Basically, we want this to be a formula. So I'll tell you why when we actually get to the n8n component of this, because the name actually pulls in a record string. It actually doesn't pull in the name itself. So we need a plain model text. we're going to use Open Router, and we might use max tokens and temperature. This Open Router code is actually just a duplicate, so we don't need that. We might use max tokens and temperatures, but maybe not. Next, we then just need to integrate our AI model into our webinar table. So we're just going to come up to linked records, add our AI models. So I'm just going to call this AI model. Allow linking to multiple records. No, we only want to link to one record. So add that in. So now we can integrate whatever model we want simply by the click of a button. If you want to use Claude, you can use Claude. If you want to use Grok, if you want to use ChatGPT, any of them can be integrated easily with the click of a button. But like I said, we need to bring in that lookup field for our AI model plain text, and then maybe temperature and max tokens. Let's just bring in that in anyway. Then we need a way to trigger our AI models and our AI workflows. So the way that we do this is typically by a button, and we're just going to call this execute AI workflow 1. And this one would be, I'll just call this workflow 1 for now. We'll make this a button, and we'll just leave in a placeholder for the formula, and we'll come back to that later. So our base ID can be found up in the string, so it's probably going to be off the screen for you, but it just starts with APP after airtable.com/. We're just going to bring that base ID in here. So I just need to sit in between some two quotations, and it should look something like that. So let's start with APP. Next is the table ID. So that'll be found in the next part of the URL string, just after APP, and then there's another slash, and then there'll be another string that begins with TBL. So we'll add that one in. And then the record ID is another variable that Airtable gives us, which is a record is simply a line across in the table. So all we need to do now is add that in, and then once we set up our n8n, we'll change this webhook placeholder to the webhook that n8n give us. So what this allows us to do is all of the information across this line here can get sent into n8n, so that allows us to reference that information to use with our AI node. Now, the next thing that I like to add in for the AI component is just a way for us to track what's happening inside of n8n with a signal inside of the dashboard. So I'm just going to call this AI status, and we're going to add in pre-AI. AI is writing, and AI complete. You can also add in an error if you wanted to. So typically I'll just change the colors a little bit, and we always set the default option as AI status. So what will happen is when we hit this button, we'll set it up so that it says AI writing. It's going through, it's generating all the outputs that we need. Once the output is executed successfully, it will then change automatically to AI complete. Now, why that's important is because we can add that status into this webinar list view here. So we're probably going to have this information down here. So we'll just say AI triggers, and we're going to add those things that we just created inside of here. So we'll add our AI status, our button, and our AI model. So we might change this up. We'll allow a link or unlink records. This is going to go on top. Pre-AI, let's put the status over here like this. So now we can simply trigger our AI workflows from this interface here like this. So we'll trigger it from this button. It'll change. It'll say the status is going. It's going to pull in the AI model that we reference here. And then if we want to use another model, then we simply just change this one out, and we add in maybe GPT-4o mini, for example. So it's as simple as that. And you can see this all starting to come together now pretty nicely. Now, the other thing I like is, because this is going to be very text heavy, is let's just make this large. Let's just bring this across so it's a full page. So now when this is open, we can see it in a full page. We've got our comments over here, and we can come back to our main dashboard from up the top here. And now we move on to the AI output field. So this is generally fairly easy to create. So let's just dive in. So we'll just go AI output as our new table. And this first one is going to be our AI output field for the main parts of the AI output. So we'll go create field. We'll do also a created date. So this will help us with some formatting inside of the interface. The next one that I want to add in here is going to be a link to the webinar field. So this will allow us to link these together. So essentially, like if we come back to webinar 1, you might generate multiple outputs for webinar 1. So by doing this, we can then find these outputs from inside of here as well. So this will all make sense once we complete the interface at the end. The next one I'm going to do more of like so if we look at the diagram we had here, we're going to have a couple of different outputs. So one for the webinar itself and then one for the marketing. So what I would do is I would have a single select and I'll just say output type. And one's going to be webinar. So this would be like the slides and so forth. And then one's going to be for marketing. So maybe I'll just change the colors a little bit. So we have those in here now as well. The other thing you could do is an ID, but we could also send that into the name. So let's go, yeah, we'll do an ID. So we'll just say output ID. And we'll change the front or like the main field here to be a formula. So we're going to call this output ID and we'll add in the webinar as well. So this would just be like, let's just call it webinar slides, for example, as the ID. So it'd be webinar slides for webinar number 1 would be the name. So this will just make it so much easier to identify later once we are generating multiple outputs per webinar. So again, it's going to make so much more sense as we continue building out. Now, if we come back in, there's actually a couple of different workflows that we're creating. So number 1 is the research workflow. This is going to output back into here. Number 2, workflow 2 is going to be create an outline. And workflow 3 is then the PowerPoints or the keynotes. So there's a couple of ways we could do this. We could build another table over here and call it a prompt library. So if you look into the full podcasting system, that's what we actually did. We built out a prompt library. But I think because of the way that this one is actually fairly simple. So we would actually just have a different button for each workflow. So this would actually be workflow 1 and we would have workflow 2 and 3. So let's just see if we can duplicate both of these. All right, so workflow 2 and workflow 3. So these are the hacks that you find as you're building, is you can just duplicate them before you've changed the webhook so that everything's really done for you. Like once you start getting into a little bit of a rhythm with these types of tools, then you can actually build some pretty good systems in maybe just a few hours time. So right now I'm probably like an hour into building this system. When I first started, this probably would have taken me 10 hours to get to this point. But now I've done it so many times, I understand the structure of like, how do we structure the database? How do we structure the different workflows? What are the quick little hacks to build things faster? And now instead of it taking 10 hours, it's probably going to take like 2 to 3 hours in order to build this and get it to where I want, instead of like 10 to 20 hours. So these are all the little hacks that you pick up as you go, but you have to dive in and you have to start building them. You have to watch these types of videos over and over again to understand. Now, before we dive into the n8n automations, let's just finish off our interfaces here. So we need a new interface. This is going to be quite an easy one to do. So I'll just build it myself. This will be for our AI output. So we'll go and we'll add that in. And we're going to need another one as well for our AI models. So let's just add that one in here as well. All right, so the AI models we can come back to at the end. The AI output is the one that I want to structure right now. So let's just allow this a record creation. We're going to open this up. The output ID we don't need in here because it's going to appear up the top anyway. We'll make this appear to be smaller. We can add a button up the top so that they can delete it if they wish. All right, so let's just structure this section out now. So what will happen is the AI output will get the AI, all of the outputs from the AI itself. We'll have our output type here. That's not going to be editable, and then it'll link into this webinar. So what will actually happen is we'll get a whole bunch of fields in here, and then you can go back and so you'll be able to see which webinar it was actually generated from. We'll also do that in our webinar list view. So that'll make more sense in just a moment. So essentially we now need to build a workflow that generates the AI output into here, and the AI provides us with the output type plus an ID, and then we'll have a whole bunch of outputs linked to this webinar. We could also structure this section here. So let's just make the output ID as the first one. That's fine. Well, we could actually just do the name field. So we could do the name field and then the type. And let's add the type in here. Now, the other thing that we'll edit is from the webinar list view. So let's just call this webinars, AI output, and AI models. So what will happen down here is if I add, what we need to do, which I didn't do yet, is, we did. So we've linked our AI output. So if I come back into webinars here, I open this up, and then down the bottom, I put in the AI output, we'll be able to see all the different records that it creates down the bottom here. So if I click on this, what we can do is we can now see the full, everything that's referenced into here. So basically, this allows us to build systems that are all linked together. What a lot of people do, and what I did at the start, is I would generate all of the outputs inside of here, but I wouldn't link it back to the original record. So imagine if you're doing this at scale and you have 10 team members working on 20 different webinars. They're generating dozens of outputs per day, and then you have no idea what output goes where. Whereas now we have it linked back to the original record where it was generated from, and makes it so much easier to see the records for this in this particular webinar here. So let's just change these fields here. We don't need that one. We would just put in, let's just put in our output type, and let's put in our output ID. So we can add both of those. I think that's fine. We don't need our AI output, and we put a created time. That's probably fine. All right, so the way this would work is you would come in, you would go new brand, you would add in your brand. You've got your brand details here. You then open up the webinar, you add a new webinar, you link this to your brand. So you choose the Big Moves brand, link all of this in, fill in the form. That then gives you a form that's just like this. So we need to fill all of this in. Once you have all this filled in, then we have our triggers here. So we didn't need to add in our other triggers. So we've got our workflow 1, workflow 2, and workflow 3. So once we generate these, once we build these, then I'll add in some helper text as to what each of these workflows generate. And then we can add in, we need to just change the name or the label of these buttons. And I mean, you could change the color as well. So you have different colors for each workflow. So we would trigger these AI triggers. The outputs would then get generated into our AI output field. We then trigger the workflow 2 once we have that created, and then workflow 3. Now there's probably a few things that we need to add into workflow 2 and 3. So we'll build those as we go, and maybe these buttons will change, but this is the basic structure of this workflow. So we've made some good progress building this Airtable base, getting it ready, and now we can begin to work on the n8n workflows. Now, like I said, there's probably going to be fields that pop up that we need to change. We're probably going to edit the interface a little bit, but we can see now it's starting to come to life. And I like to see it visually first, so I know how I need to structure the automations. Now, the other thing that I am considering is maybe we don't send everything into the AI output field. We could send more of it back into the original record, which, I mean, workflow 1 is doing, but these are the decisions that I make on the fly. So you don't want to try and map out everything meticulously the first go when you're working on any type of project, whether it's a workflow like this or one with your client. You want to have a high level overview, which I've shown you inside of the ClickUp whiteboard, and then you make some changes on the fly as you were going and you see it all come to life. That's how we can build so much faster, because you can just waste so much time planning and you rarely stick to that plan anyway. So you might as well just do it like this.
Okay, so now let's dive into n8n. So I've gone and filled out these fields here that we need to have filled in first. Now, in order to fill these in, then you probably want to have our business growth and offer product installed already. So here you can create your product, you can create your offer, and then that product and offer is then used in this workflow. So you probably want to start these first. For me, I'm going to use our n8n and Airtable AI agent bundle, because I would like to actually create a webinar for this particular product. So this product includes all of the templates, which you're watching right now. So if you just want to get access to the templates and install them, save yourself 100 hours of trying to learn how to put all of this together yourself, then you can just buy the templates for a super low price. Like I've got $59 there. It may be cheaper, it may be a little bit more. Regardless, if it's under $500, then it's absolutely a valuable product to have. So I've just taken a few of the things that we generated in this workflow in the product and offer section, and then I added these into our webinar section now.
So we're going to generate an Apple keynote. It's going to be 60 minutes. I'm the host. We've got our 3 learning outcomes there. We've got the benefits for what this webinar will provide to the audience. We've got some bonuses, and we've got the offer name and the offer details. It's going to be a digital product. We'll put in the price of $59. The desired outcome is here. And then we've got a few testimonials that we've had over the years. Now we're going to trigger all of the above from this button here, and it's going to generate topic ideas, target audience, SMART goals, and any offer objections potentially. So let's look at these and see what we can come up with, and then we'll get on to workflow 2 and 3. So in order to do this, we need to pull all of this information up here into an n8n workflow and then send it through the different AI modules. So in order to do that, we open up our n8n and we're just going to use webhooks. So if you remember when we're building out the buttons, then we were adding placeholders for webhooks. So here I'm going to just change this to using respond node for the response section. And we're going to grab this webhook URL here. And I'm going to add in a second webhook response node as well. And I'm going to add text. And then I just have a little piece of code here saved, which is script window.close script, close script. So now, when I come back in, let me just execute that before we go anywhere. And we come back in and I go edit page and we go to this button here and go edit field. If we select that placeholder and add in our webhook and hit save, and if we hit this button now, it'll immediately close because it's been captured in this webhook. So you can see that we now have 2 green ticks, which means it's captured some details in this webhook. Next, we need to then tell it that we're actually speaking with Airtable. So we link in an Airtable and we want to get a record. So we want to get all of that information from Airtable in our Airtable base. Now, in order to do that, so when we were building out this formula here, let me just open this back up again. So if you remember when we were building this formula here, we added in a base ID and a table ID, and then we programmed in a record ID. So you can see these values here, and then the record ID will look similar, starting with REC. So if I open this back up, we can see over in our respond to webhook node, we've got our base ID, table ID, and record ID. The reason we do that is because in order to map all of the details from Airtable into the system, we just simply drag those across, hit execute step, and now we have access to all of that information inside of Airtable. So that's how easy it is to begin building, because we start to build in a much smarter way as we're building out these systems. Now, if you didn't do that, if you didn't add the IDs into your webhook, then you would have to come in, you would have to go to search it from list. If you have dozens of Airtable bases, then you've got to search through dozens of different bases to go through, and then your tables, and it just takes way longer. So I'm talking about it may take an extra 30 seconds to 60 seconds, but if you're doing this multiple times per day, you might save yourself 10 minutes. But it's not just that, it's like you get into a flow of building much faster if you build these types of shortcuts into your system. So now we have access to all that information. Now I'm just going to highlight all of that and then press P in order to pin this information so that we can use it ongoingly for the rest of the workflow. Now that we have that, then remember also we have our AI status field here. So I'm going to add in another Airtable, and this time we're going to go update record, and we're going to pull in those same values that we had for our base ID, table ID, and record ID. And this time we're going to change the AI status to AI writing. So it updates that status for us. So to do that, we just need to delete all of the other ones that we're not going to use. And then this AI status, we change to AI writing. If we hit execute, then we come back into our workflow. You can see now that it's updated this status here. So that's how we send status updates into our dashboard so you can see what's going on. Now we can also do errors as we're going. I'm going to talk about that maybe at the end. So we've got that. Now we've got the information inside of n8n, and now we can begin to use our AI components. So in order to do this, we're going to use the OpenAI node. However, we're not going to use the OpenAI developer account. We're using OpenRouter. So here, if we open up our OpenRouter integration, we've got our API key, which comes from OpenRouter, but then we also have our base URL. So if I go to openrouter.ai and then I just choose any of the models, so let's just see if we can just find, let's just go to Quen. So in order to, if let's say we wanted to use Quen, then we would just add that code into our AI model dashboard. And if you come down to the bottom and have a look at this code here, we can see that the base URL is openrouter.ai/API/v1. Now we can actually use that in our base URL here inside the OpenAI node so that the node is fully configured and ready to go for us. Whereas if we use the OpenAI developer account, then you can see that the base URL is actually different for OpenAI. So this is just a little hack to make it easier to use OpenRouter. If you didn't do it this way, you would have to use an HTTP call, and it's just a little bit harder to structure your prompts. So you can see here we have our prompt structured, or our prompt node structured nicely. So this one is going to be, if we come back into our whiteboard here, this one is going to be topic ideas. So we have a prompt here, which we might improve a little bit. So if I select Open Router and then I want to map in our AI models, so I'm going to use our get record, and then somewhere in here, we can probably just search for it, AI model. So we can see we have our plain text version. So again, you'll remember that I said when we're using our AI models, if we just pull in this field here, then it's going to give us a record ID. So obviously if I drag that in there, it's not going to pull in the AI model. So what we actually need to do is, that's why we created that plain text field. So when I pull in plain text, we can see now Anthropic Claude Opus 4 is actually getting used in this node now. Next, I'll paste in our prompt, and then this prompt was what? It was topic ideas. So I'll rename this to topic ideas. And we need to map in a few things for our prompt here. So the prompt is your world-class webinar strategist and creator who specializes in the following niche. So what I actually prefer to do is, the reason why we have brand context is because we want to add that into basically every prompt. So I'm going to add that in first. And then if we have a look at our fields, so I like to work from the get a record field. So all of those fields that from our brand assets that we added in via a lookup field should now be available for us to use inside of here. So if we scroll down a little bit and we come down to, or let's have a look, where are we scrolling to? So we actually don't have it. And I actually made a fundamental mistake up here, is we need to select a brand as well. So we need to add this in here. And we make this editable. So let's go, we can link and unlink records, and we'll just put this over to the side. So we need to be able to select this brand, and then that will allow all of the extra lookup fields to come in. So I'm just going to hit publish here for a moment, and we're going to re-trigger this workflow. And you'll now see that all those brand details that we want to add into our AI prompts will become available. So I just unpin this first. Let's go execute workflow. We come down, we'll hit workflow 1. And now we should have, let's just pin all of this data. If we open up the topic ideas again, and let's go to get a record, we can now see that the brand asset has been selected, and we have this brand assets for automation. So I can drag this in. Let's open this up fully. So when I drag this in, we now have all of the big moves brand assets in this workflow ready to go. So I like to have brand context up the top every single time, because it's giving it the brand voice guidelines that say never use these words and phrases, and it's telling it what writing grade level to work at. So this gets added into AI prompting almost every single time. Next, we will then go instruction. So here, your world-class webinar strategist creator who specializes in the following niche. So let's just go in the, I think we did add a niche field, right? In the AI education niche. So we'll just add that in there into the sentence rather than making it not part of the sentence. Your task is to brainstorm 5 to 10 compelling webinar topic ideas tailored to the target audience below, and suggest a specific measurable goal for the webinar. So we're actually doing SMART goals next. And we were also doing a much more targeted audience. So this should actually come last. Potentially no. So we've got our audience somewhere as well. So let's just have a quick look at that. Audience avatar. So let's pull that into this field up here. So we've got our writing grade level, and then I'm going to write audience avatar. Just put in broad audience avatar. So we want 5 to 10 compelling webinar topic ideas. So this is going to be, we've already got our target audience up there, and we want to add in our offer details. So let's use this. So the offer details, now. So we'll go offer, and offer details can go in here. The key learning outcome or transformation you want the audience to get from this webinar is the learning outcome. So let's add that one in here. For each potential webinar topic, include the following: a brief, attention-grabbing topic, an outline of the key points or agenda you will cover, an explanation of how the topic meets the audience desires, a description of the potential transformation or benefit the attendees will gain. So I also added in, when we were planning this out, we also gave it a title. So I'm just going to say working webinar title ID, and let's just remove this, and then we'll add this in here as well. Suggest topics similar to this. All right, so if I have a quick look at our dashboard now, so all of these other inputs that we've created, they'll get used in the next couple of automations. So now we just want to generate a topic idea, we want to generate the target audience, and we want to generate SMART goals and potentially some offer objections, although that might come next. Let's just see. We'll leave that there for the moment. And okay, so let's just see how good this output is. So we'll just generate this and it'll begin generating. While that's generating, then you can continue working, right? So we're going to be using the same type of style for the rest of this workflow. So I'm going to add 2 more nodes here. The next one is going to be SMART goals. So we can rename this to SMART goals. And then the next one will be our target audience, our niche, or like niche target audience. Yeah, that'll work. So like I said before, we have our broad target audience, and then we also have a much niche target audience for the actual webinar itself. So looks like the AI model didn't work. So let's just re-pull this one in here. We're going to need that in our next flow as well. So let's just fix that up. All right. So let's have a look at what was generated here. Here are 10 compelling webinar topic ideas for your AI automation bundle. Okay, so it looks like it might have a few interesting ideas there. Let's just leave that. Next, we want to add in our SMART goals. So here we can come back into the whiteboard and let's grab this prompt here. And it'll be under the instruction component. So SMART goals is suggest a SMART goal for the webinar. Base this goal on industry benchmarks for our niche. In our niche, so we already have the niche idea. No, we don't. So let's go niche. Best practices for promoting offers similar to, and then we need our offer details. Typical webinar engagement and conversion metrics. Remember to focus on the topic, align the topic. All right. Write your webinar topic goals inside webinar plan tags. All right. Let's just see how this one looks. And then our niche target audience, so we'll grab that while the AI generates. So let's just grab this workflow here, or this prompt here, pull this in. So again, we're going to add in our niche. Target audience is, we potentially want to use our most recent generation here. So let's, we're diving deeper into our niche target audience. So we're going to go into our broad. Let's just go broad target audience. Webinar learning outcome, webinar idea. We already have that up here. Please include the following in the target audience: demographics, psychographics, pain points, goals, behaviors, preferred communication channels. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's generate that. So over here we have our webinar plan, topic suggestions. I don't know why we need these webinar plan tags. I'm actually going to remove that from the prompt. And we will need to regenerate that. So let's just give it a quick little stop and let's just go execute workflow. So we're just going to regenerate these from scratch again, and we can then pin all of these outputs. So it's always good to remember to save your work as you're going as well. So we're just going to do that. Now, while that's generating, then once we've generated these things, then we just need to send it back to Airtable again. Now, in order to do that, we're already set up the Airtable node one time. So we can just duplicate this update record. And if I double click into here, then the AI status is already there for us. So we can just go AI complete. And then we just need to update those 3 fields that we just added in. So topic ideas, webinar target audience, and webinar SMART goals. So we'll add those 3 in. Should we use offer objections in this point or not? It's probably a good good idea. So we can generate these as well. So let me just come back. We'll undo this one. We'll do a duplicate. And then we'll go offer objections. Now here, I'm probably going to change it a little bit because we would use our niche target audience. Here, we're going to say you're an expert in creating offers and persuasion. Your task is to... Okay, so we have this one in here now. We are saying you're an expert in creating offers and persuasion. Your task is to act as our target audience and come up with a list of objections you would have about our offer before buying. Be as specific as possible. And then we've got our offer details, our desired outcome, our price, and our testimonials. So we'll add that one in here as well. We'll go execute that step. And then we'll connect our Airtable node and we'll add in our offer objections as well. And then from here, we can then map in all of these things. So we'll add in our offer objections, our niche target audience goes into this one, our SMART goals, our topic ideas, and then that is it. Our AI status is set to AI complete. If I hit execute step, and then if we come back into here, give this a second and it will update. Maybe we'll hit a little refresh. We can now see we have our AI complete and we have our topic ideas. We have our target audience, our SMART goals, and then our objections. So that's workflow number 1 done. As you can see, it's a very simple process once you know the way of like setting these up. So once you've done it a few times, once you've installed all of these different templates that we provide to you, then you get to understand how quickly it can be to build these automations. So that took me, maybe 10, 15 minutes to build out. Whereas if you were to do 10 webinars a year, then you might have to spend half an hour to an hour like coming up and writing all this stuff manually into ChatGPT. This way, it's just automated, it's so much faster, and you can just build proper systems. Imagine 10 of these systems working together. It saves maybe an hour or two here and there. That's how you start to save 10 hours per week, 20 hours per week. This is a secret. So this is workflow number 1. Let's keep going with the next 2 workflows now. Okay, now workflow 2 is going to be similar, but slightly different. So I've gone through and I've made a few edits to the outputs here. So I've got our webinar topic. I stuck with the one that I came up with. I do like that. But I did pull in some key points that were generated by AI. I like that it says that we should explain AI agents in plain English. I think that's great. We should then also give a 3-step process to identify tasks AI should handle. Then we'll demonstrate the top 3 AI. So I just put in demo there. Demonstrate the top 3 AI agents we sell in our agency, and then templates that they can steal from us and begin installing them immediately. Why it works: it removes the tech intimidation factor, promises they'll build something in something real during the session, and then it helps transform them from AI is too complicated to I just built my first AI agent and it's already working. So it's built out a target audience here. I'll maybe do a male audience member, but I mean, potentially education, female could be slightly higher. So it's built out all of the different pain points, goals, behaviors. I think it's got all of this right. I'm not going to run through it all, but I am very happy with this persona, and then giving us a few ideas on the content to focus on. It's then provided SMART goals, which I think are great. So the SMART goals are pretty good here. I mean, it did get the pricing wrong, so I don't know why it's changed the pricing. We did give it the price. So maybe we didn't in the SMART goals. Maybe we only did in the objections. So it's actually recommending a much higher price point. Like I said, if this product that we're selling is under $500, it's an absolute bargain, but it's probably going to be under $100 when you see this as well. It's given us a few alternative webinar idea topics. We don't want to confuse the AI, so I would remove those. And then the offer objections are here. I read through these and they're all great as well. So the goal when building out the webinar is to overcome all of these questions, these objections before they come up. And if you can't do it during the presentation, then have a FAQ section at the end of the webinar to answer those objections before they start making a decision. Now, the reason why I said this is going to be a little bit different is because we're going to send the outputs for this one into our AI output field. And if we click up here, our whiteboard, we're generating 2 different outputs. So we're going to create a webinar outcome and a challenge outline. So now we need to begin this webinar number 2 workflow. So we'll open up a new workflow. We'll call it webinar number 2. And this one's going to start exactly the same way as our previous one. So rather than trying to rebuild something from scratch, we can just copy the previous version. We can copy right up to the AI, and then we'll paste this in here. Now, if you do this, you need to change the webhook ID. So let's just change these last two, and we'll just go like 41. And we'll add in our new webhook into the second workflow here. So if I come down, this one, we'll go edit field, and then we'll add in the webhook into this placeholder here, and then we'll click save. So because we've got two buttons here, then we might want to just give it a little bit of help and say, well, this then generates the webinar outline and challenges that outline or outcome. All right. So now we can simply come into our workflow 2. We'll hit save. We'll go execute workflow, come in and go hit this workflow 2 button. And then we can see this immediately runs. So again, coming back to what I was talking about in the previous one, because we're mapping in the table ID and record ID from here, then we don't need to reconfigure this. We simply just drag all of this across into this workflow and it runs immediately. Now, we do need to change the prompt here, obviously. So this prompt is not going to be correct, but we're going to say webinar outcome here. And then we'll come in, we'll grab this prompt. So it's quite a long prompt this time. And we'll open this up, and we probably need to change some of these variables. So I'm just going to get rid of everything above there. So brand context always goes in. So let's just add this in here. We are now needing to add in the webinar context. So we could add it in like this. So we've got our webinar topic ID, our target audience, all of these things. But I'm just going to say webinar context. And I'm going to say webinar topic. All right. So then we just need to drag in all of these things that we created back up here. So we've got our topic idea. So webinar topic ideas is what we need to add in. Cool. So we've added in our webinar context here. We've got our topic, audience, learning outcome, offer details, offer objections. So we're saying you're a world-class webinar strategist. So let's just add in instruction here. You're a world-class webinar strategist and creator who specializes in, so we don't need that. Your task is to create a comprehensive 40 to 50 minute presentation outline for a webinar on the following topic. For a webinar based on the details above. To create the webinar outline, follow these steps. So write an introduction section, topic overview, relevance, 2 to 3 main sections, conclusion, proof, all of these things. So the rest of this is actually pretty solid. So let's now generate this, and then we want to challenge that outcome. So I will duplicate this, but we're not going to really use too much of the typical variables that we would. So while that's running, let's just grab this challenge outcome prompt, and then we'll say challenge outcome. And in here, we're just going to say up the top, webinar outcome, and then we'll have instruction. All right, so this one, we're going to challenge the outcome. So we've got our audience avatar here in the top. You can see over here on the right, and then we've got our instruction, act as the audience avatar and review the content outline that has been created. Here is the webinar outline. So we actually need a much longer prompt here. Didn't drag it all in. Let's see if we can grab all of this. All right, so let's review. We're asking it to do the review. Write your constructive feedback. All right, so we pull that in. So it's going to run off and do that. Now, this next section is we do need to add it back into Airtable, but this is a little bit different because we may want to generate these outputs multiple times. So we'll go create a record this time. Now, we could actually send in some extra details in the webhook, which I think we will do. So let's just do that. So if we come back into our data and then we look at our AI output field, you might not be able to see this because it'll be cut off. But up the top in the URL string, you'll see TBL and then a whole bunch of different letters. This is the table ID for your AI output field. So I'm going to copy that and come back into our webinar section here and go across to our execute workflow 2, open this up, and we're actually going to put in here an output table ID field as well. So if I just do, let's just paste that in for a second. So that's our output table ID. And what I can do is grab this here like this, paste that in. We just need to change this to output table ID. And we can send this ID into the system as well, so that we can automatically map that into the output table ID. So I'm just going to hit confirm, and we will need to regenerate this workflow again. So we'll just go execute workflow. We need to delete this for a second. We'll come back to that. So we'll go execute workflow, and we're going to generate workflow 2. It'll go off, it'll start doing the webinar outcome and challenge outcome. And then we're going to create a record with Airtable. And then we can map in the IDs into the base ID, table ID, and record ID like we've done previously. So this is just going to take a second to generate. Okay, so that one's generated. And then we can now map in those variables again. So if we open these up, we'll go in base ID, and then we want the output table ID. And then we can now map in our outputs here. So we've got output ID, AI output, output type, and then webinar. So if we were to add these in, it's not actually going to add in as multiple records or like multiple lines in the system. So we need to configure these actually a little bit differently. So there's 2 things that I'm going to do here. Number 1 is we're going to change these to a JSON output. So we need an output ID, and then we need our AI output and our AI output type. So, and then our webinar will map in a different way. So we need to change these prompts. First, I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to come down here to output content as JSON. We're going to turn that on, and then we'll come down and we'll add in an output example or output structure. So I'll just get ChatGPT to write this out in the best way possible. So I want to add this to a prompt, and then we're just going to copy all of this here, and we'll come back into our prompt. We'll add that like this, and we'll add in the example. So we actually want to change these a little bit. So our output ID is, we can just change this to webinar outcome. Our AI content is the main generated text or content, and our AI and our output type is either webinar or marketing, and this one is going to be webinar. And we want to copy that for our next one as well. So I'm just going to copy that, and we'll go execute step. We'll let that run, and we'll have a quick look at it when it comes through. And then this one here, we'll add this down to the bottom as well. But this time we want our output ID to be challenge outcome, and that remains the same. So this is going to be challenge outcome, and then our output type is webinar. Now here we're also going to need a second Airtable. So we're just going to Airtable, create a record. And once this is ready, then we'll map in those same variables that we did previously. So let's just do that first before we look at that output. So we'll go base ID, table ID. And then if we close this now, if we have a look at our webinar outcome, we can see we have our output ID, our AI content, and our output type. So if I come back down here, we're actually mapped in the wrong ID. Sorry about that. Output table ID, and then these should match. So output ID, our content, and then our output type, and then our webinar is going to be the original record that it came from. So we add in this ID here, but we need to put this inside of an array. So to do that, we should just be able to do this, and maybe we need some quotations, I think. And now, so we have our output ID, webinar outcome, we have the output from AI, we have the webinar type, and then we're mapping it back to our original record. And if I hit execute step, that has worked successfully. If I look at our back where we were inside of our webinar and come down to here, we can see this is now being generated down here, our webinar outcome, and that output that we just created is all through here. So that's how we can start to tie the interface in and the original record into this system. So this is what I mean by building a system. If we didn't do this, then you're just going to have a whole bunch of AI outputs, and imagine you're an agency generating dozens of webinars per week. You're not going to know which record goes with the original record, and it's going to be so confusing and hard to see. So this is how you begin to understand how to structure a database, how to build apps, how to really become a developer that thinks about long-term systems or scalable systems for businesses. Whether it's your own business or whether you're working with clients, these are the ways that you need to build. We need to stop being lazy and like making things more complicated, because anything that is complicated just doesn't get followed through on. So let's just finish this workflow off. We just need to do the same thing here for the final one now. So if we just come back in, we can now trigger our challenge outcome, and then we can map in our challenge outcome as well. Let's check that I checked JSON. I didn't. So maybe let's just hit stop. We've got that in there. It's like that. We need to then just change our webinar outline. Looks like that didn't get mapped in because we changed this. So we just need to open this up again. We need to remap in our AI content into this section, and then we'll go execute step. And this one should now run and provide us with what we require for this final node here. Okay, so we map in our output ID, our content, our type, and then we add in the original record again. So if we just go bang, 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 add in our ID here, hit execute step, and we are done. So if we open this up now, we can see we've got our webinar outcome and our challenge outcome here. But you can also see that they'll appear in our AI output field as well. So we could then begin to structure this section. Maybe we group them by the type. So we can see which ones are for webinars and which ones are for marketing. We can also just delete these records that we're no longer needing. And this system is starting to come together. So there are a few things that we need to clean up. Like we need to add the AI model up here in this section here as well. We've got it down here. We've got our status. So that's the final thing that I haven't done, is we need to update our status. So because we don't update the status in creator record, because that's a completely different table, we update it in our getter record, but we actually need an update record, not getter record. So we'll just go Airtable and we'll go update record. We'll map in our original table ID. So come back into our webhook here. So we can map in our base ID. We want our original table ID. We want to map in the record ID here, and then the update status. So we'll just remove all of these ones we don't need. Let's just remove them all. We'll add in the status and we'll go complete and we'll hit save. Now, what I didn't do last time is the error control. So let's just add those in just in case. So typically the only ones that are going to error out are the AI ones. So we'll add a retry. So sometimes if it errors out, it can retry. And then if we go on error, continue using error output. So, and here provides us with a second node. We can add this down here, and then we change this AI status to error. So that's how we can add errors back into the dashboard as well. So let's add that to the second one. So again, we go retry and fail. So if it fails, we want to try it 3 more times before it errors. And then once it does error, then we want to continue using the error output. And then this output simply comes down to this error section here. So that if there's ever an error from the AI, it'll come down and it will change this status here to error. So now that is that workflow completed as well. So we'll just unpin this stuff, hit save, and then that one is done. So now workflow 3 is going to be quite similar, and then we need to clean up the rest of the dashboard. So let's continue with that now. So that's essentially workflow 2. As you can see, we're now starting to see a really great system come together. We do have the final workflow here to build, which is going to be very similar to what we just built just now. And then we can go through and just clean up some of the finer details inside the interface to make it more usable, to make it as user-friendly as possible. Let's keep going. Okay, moving on to workflow 3 now. So there's a couple of different things that we will need to do. We'll need to filter for PowerPoint versus Keynote scripts. And then we'll need to send in a couple of different variations. I have them over here. I have our webinar revisions. I have our PowerPoint code, our Keynote code, a follow-up sequence, an invite email, and some marketing assets. So in order to get started with this one, we will come into our webinar 3. Now, like I said before, is we can use what we've done previously in order to generate this. So let's copy all of this up front. And we'll just go generate. We'll change our webhook ID. We'll just change this to like 96, and we'll click OK. And we need basically everything that we had for the workflow 2. So here we need to change this up, and we'll add in our webhook here, but we also need the output table ID as well, remember? So I'm not going to go through that process again. I'm simply just going to add it from this section here. So we'll grab our output table ID, copy that, and then come back into our workflow 3, add that in here. I think that looks right. Nope, wrong location. Should be after the ID. So make sure you add it into the right place. We'll hit save, confirm that change, and we'll add a bit of a helper text. So we'll say revisions to outcome, marketing emails, and assets. Also the presentation. So that's what we'll be generating in workflow 3. So now we come back into our workflow, and we've got a few different things that we're going to do here instead. So number one is this one's going to be revisions, right? So let's just add in webinar revisions. Now, in order to get the webinar revisions, I've added in a new field down here. But here we would need to read through our challenge outcome, read through our original outcome plus the challenge outcome, and then make the revisions there. So how about we just go, rather than me reading through this all, I'm just going to look at some of this, and we will just add the areas for improvement. So let's just grab this here, and we'll take the areas of improvement that AI suggested. Let's say that we agree, and we're going to add all of this in here. The pricing seems suspiciously low. So guys, again, like if you're buying this for under $100, it's suspiciously low according to AI. So we do need to explain why it's so low. Basically, we do it so low is because we just want to get people into our community. That's the secret. But we want a self-liquidating offer on the front end. So we run a ton of ads at these offers and make a little bit of money on the front end to get people in the community. It's as simple as that. If you want a marketing masterclass, I've generated millions of dollars and millions of dollars from webinars alone. Let me know and we can dive deeper into all of these types of things. All right. The examples field cherry picked. 72 hours is more than enough scarcity. I don't agree with that at all. And I don't really know what this means. So we'll just remove those. All right. So there's our revisions there. And that's what we need to add into the first one. So webinar revisions is going to be the first one. We're going to structure this a little differently. So next, after our webinar revisions, I'm just going to structure this out a little bit first. So remember over here, back in our whiteboard, we've got our revision section here. So maybe let's just pull this in. Actually, what I'll do is I'll build this out in terms of structure first, and then I'll just complete all the prompts. You've seen me build prompts now, so you don't need to watch those again. But you might want to understand how we're actually building these sections. So webinar revisions is going to be the first one. The next one is going to be our PowerPoints, right? So this one could be our PowerPoint code. So these ones here are going to be our PowerPoint code and our Keynote code. But we need something before this. So if I move these over here, we actually need an if node. So if I just go add node, and we'll just go if, because we need to filter. So let me just add this here, and we'll just simply structure it like this time. So let's just go execute workflow. We'll try and pull in some information here. We'll let that run in the background. But here we're going to use the if node to get a record, and we need to determine back at the very start, you might remember, we had our slide type. So here, we're going to drag that in, and we're going to call this slide type. Actually, that's not correct. We need to if. So if slide type is equal to Apple Keynote, let's just pause this. We need to run this one. So we go if it is equal to, and then it'll give us a true or false. So here we go into if it is equal to Keynote, we need to change this one to the top. So if it is Keynote, true. And then PowerPoint, if it's not Keynote, then it's obviously going to be PowerPoint, so we can add a false. So this will determine which one it should use. So that depends entirely on when we were building this up the top, what you selected here. So that's how we structure that. Next, we then will do what was next on our list. So we've done our PowerPoint code, our Keynote code, our webinar follow-up sequence. So this one, we'll just rename to webinar follow-up sequence. And then we'll just add another route down here. The next one should then be our invite emails. And then our final one should be our marketing assets. Now you might see that I've structured this a little bit differently compared to the last one. There's no right or wrong way of how you do this. You could do it in a full straight line if you wanted to and join all of these up. It doesn't really matter. The only time that you would have a problem in a straight line is in the if statement. You would have to aggregate these or like join these back together again at the end. So we're just going to structure it like this. Now, all I need to do is go through and complete all the prompts, and then we can give this workflow a test as well. Now, keep it in mind that when we are completing those prompts, we are sending them back into our webinar. We're doing our output format, but we would change, that's annoying, I just deleted that accidentally, but we would change the output type to marketing inside of the prompt when we're actually using those ones. So I'm just going to go ahead and do all of that now myself in the background. Now, actually, as I was creating this, I realized that it's not going to flow exactly as I was thinking originally. So what we need to do is we need to have our approved webinar outline here, but you may still want to do this outcome, like the revisions automatically with AI. So the easiest way to do this would actually just be to create a new workflow. So I'm just going to add in a revision workflow, and we'll just call this webinar 4, or like webinar revision. And we can just bring in these first ones, and we can bring in these top ones here. So now if I just go execute workflow, actually, so we'll just change the webhook and we'll create a new webhook inside of the workflow. And we'll name this down here. So we'll go edit, and we'll just copy this. So we'll go edit, we'll grab this entire thing here. We'll add in new, and I'll add in a button field, webinar execute, webinar revision. And what I'm actually going to do is only allow this button to be clicked if the revision field has been filled out. So this webinar outcome revisions. So I'm just coming into ChatGPT, and there's an Airtable GPT, and I'm going to say only allow this formula button to be clicked if this field is not empty. So it's going to update this, and it's going to provide an if statement in front of the concatenate. So all I need is just this section here, and I'll come back in and paste this up the top. And now we should, well, it's saying invalid. Let's just see why. I just need to close the brackets. Maybe one more. So now it will only allow this button to be clicked if there's something in here. So if I remove this, now that button cannot get clicked. But as soon as I add some details into here, it's able to be clicked. So this will only allow, we can do this with all the others as well if we wanted to, but it's just, it helps structure the system so that people know which buttons can be clicked at what time. So that would be some of the finer details I go into when building out this for clients. We're not going to do it for all of the buttons. You can do it yourself if you like, but that just gives you a bit of an idea as to why you would use this. So now let's just come back in and let's just trigger this workflow. We might not have updated it. Okay, let's try again. So let's now trigger this workflow, and it's going to pull this in. So, all right, now we can come in, we can do our editing of the prompt here. So let's grab that prompt from inside of here. We'll recopy all of this. Okay, it's already in here. So we're going to say the webinar outline. So this is what we call the approved webinar outline. Here are the changes. So we need to add in the revision section here. And then we're asking it to go ahead and make those changes. So let's hit execute step. And then we want to update the record that we're actually bringing this in from, not create. So here, we would then, actually, that's not correct. We're going to generate a second version of our revisions. So we can simply open this one up. We probably need to update the prompt to say we need to add the JSON field. So let's just grab that from back over here. This is going to be webinar outcome, and the type is webinar. So that's correct. We're asking it to generate JSON. We'll just undo that and we'll trigger it again. And then the creator record will hopefully be mapped in there already as well. I did actually delete one thing, didn't I? Okay, so that's generated a new version now. So that should drop into here once we fix up the Airtable component. So if we open this up, we've got our AI output ID to map in, and then it looks like the rest should be fine. So now we can have a second version here. So you could add in an extra component of like tracking how many of these are added, and you could have webinar outcome number 2. But as long as you structure this so that the field, or as long as you know that the most recent one is at the top, then you know which one to actually work off. So now that's done, then we simply just added in a option here for our AI complete and an error one for down here to say that if there's an error, then we change that status there. So that was an easy workflow to build. That one is basically completed now. Now we can come back into our original number 3 again, and we can remove the revisions one because we don't actually need that. Let's clean this up. So now we can then generate the rest of these now that we have the revisions complete. Okay, so that's basically the workflow. We've done a lot of work and we've come a long way. So let's dive in, let's make a few finishing touches, and then we will have a pretty nice system to actually begin using. So you can see here, all of the outputs have dropped into here. Now, one thing I have seen is that it might get a little bit confusing with the ID here. I'm going to leave it, but yeah, I mean, maybe making the first part of the title here stand out a bit better could be something you might want to work on. But we just need to make a few changes to this dashboard. So if we come back and we just go edit. Now remember how this works. We complete all of these things up the top here before we even get started. And then we begin to generate all of the different components, AI components, once we get to this AI output field. Now, we can choose the model at this stage. So if I add in AI models here, and we'll just format this a little bit nicer, click on that, and we'll go link unlinked records. So we can execute it like that. So we can choose our AI model. I think that's a good option to have here. Come down, it generates all of these things, we edit them, and then we come down to workflow 2. Now the webinar revision, I would probably put this down here with the revision tab. So let's just add this one here, execute webinar revision. Maybe we'll just add a status update section here as well. The revision, yeah, we'd also need the AI model for the revision. So let's just add this one here as well. Now, the only problem that I have with the AI model with Airtable with this workflow is that when you update the AI model here, it changes the entire flow. So it doesn't individualize the AI model for each of these buttons, but it will change in each one of these elements here. So if you update this one, it will change the bottom one and the top one and so forth. It's not a huge deal, but you just need to understand that when selecting the AI models. We've got our approved webinar outline section here as well. So we might want to add in just a little bit of advice into this section. So it's going to show on all of the outputs, but like, let's just go to the group and then we'll add the description and we'll just go notes. So we're just saying note when you have an approved outline for your webinar, add it to the main dashboard. Now, what I mean by that is they need to add it to the approved webinar outline down here. So what I would do is I would update this formula field and we're just going to write if. Let's go if, and then we'll need to add that in there like that. And I think if we just do this and hit save, and we'll go confirm change. Now let's just do a quick test. So approved webinar outline. If I remove that button can no longer be clicked. So that's what I'm looking for there. If I just add that back in, and we'll just add in some more helper text, and we'll just go if. So we're saying add this approved webinar outline to below. So you could also do it another way where you have multiple output sections for your AI triggers and output. But I mean, I like this here. I like having all of the outputs in the one section. I think that's a little bit easier. And then we just need to make sure that they need to add in or make it clear in the documentation that they should add this in down below before they execute number 3. And with that little if statement, it makes it a little bit cleaner. So that one's pretty good, and I think that's good. I'm happy with that. Let's have a quick look at the AI output section now. So these are structured by the webinar and marketing types. I'm happy with that. When you click in, you see the same things as what you do from the original dashboard. So that's good. AI models should look pretty decent. There's nothing we really need to do there. Brands, I did see there was a filter up here. So this filter, filtering by writing grade level makes no sense at all. filtering by webinar makes no real sense at all. We have no other options there. I don't even know, like maybe we can just delete them. Yeah, we don't need them. So the other thing here you could add is webinars. So let's just clean this up and we'll add in webinars. So it will show all of the webinars for that brand. So let's just make sure we've got some decent fields in here. We've got webinar, let's add in like webinar name. So yeah, we've got our webinar name here for the Big Moves brand and then the offer name. Oops, it looks like I added one more in there, which I didn't want. Let's just remove those two. So we've got the offer name. So you'll be able to see all the webinars created for this brand from the brand assets tab as well. So if I hit publish now and come into here, we could also just access this webinar from this location. Let me just do a quick edit on that. So if we open this up and we click on this webinar, we could go allow the record detail, and then that'll click directly into the webinar from this page here as well. So we're basically just building this dashboard to make it easy for people to work around, to choose, like filter through different things, to really just make sure it's as easy as possible for people to use. So that's basically the system. Now, as you can see, we're taking this a long way from just your simple table with no real structure, with no interface, into a fully fledged AI agent system. This is how you build solid products. This is how you deliver great products to clients. This is how you have your clients wanting to continue with you each and every month. This is how you have great lifetime value per client. All of these things are so important. You don't want to be following 90% of the videos that are out there just showing you basic automations. They have no real world value. They might do a couple of things okay, but you have nothing to scale up and people are just not going to use them long term. The longer you can have people using your systems, the more they want to continue working with you and building more and more systems. So make sure you build something solid. Take what I've learned here, take what I've built here for you and iterate on it and make it your own, improve on it. There's so many different things that you could do. I've added ideas into the whiteboard as well. So when you download this product, you can check the whiteboard and see what other add-ons you could add to this workflow. So don't forget, if you want this template, there'll be a link in the description as to where you can grab that. And if you do have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll definitely reply to you as well. Now, if you are interested in more of these, I have another video right here where we dive into another complete AI agent system. And you can see how I go from start to finish of building that product as well. See you in that video.